Your carrier has been able to read every text you've ever sent to an Android user.
Since the beginning of texting.
Apple just started turning that off.
And the update is already rolling out to phones.
The protocol your texts have been running on was designed in the 1980s for a world where your biggest threat was a dropped call. Security came later, except it never really did. Every carrier, every government with a subpoena, every halfway competent hacker on the right network could read your messages the whole time.
And the wild thing is, we all knew this. Security people have been screaming about it for years, but the fix kept not happening because it required Apple and Google to agree on something, which is like asking two countries with a trade war to harmonize their tax codes.
The standard they finally landed on is called RCS, Rich Communication Services. Think of it as the upgrade SMS was always supposed to get. Better media, read receipts, typing indicators. The encryption piece is the part that actually matters, and that required both companies to implement the same cryptographic layer at the same time.
Which they did, quietly. No announcement. It just rolls out in iOS 26.5, and it works. Your green bubble conversation with your Android-using friend is now end-to-end encrypted by default, meaning the message is scrambled on your phone and only unscrambled on their phone. Your carrier never sees the actual content.
The by default part is doing a lot of work there. Signal has had this for years, but you have to download Signal. WhatsApp has it, but you have to be on WhatsApp. The entire premise here is that most people don't change settings, don't download things, don't think about their threat model. They just text.
And for everyone who just texts, the last decade of security advice has basically been don't use SMS for anything sensitive. Two-factor codes, personal conversations, medical stuff, all of it flowing through a protocol with no encryption, while people assumed it was fine because it felt private.
The carrier piece is the one that keeps me thinking. Your carrier has always been able to see SMS content. It's part of how the billing and routing infrastructure works. That relationship between what you send and what the network can see just changed in a way most people will never notice.
And it raises something uncomfortable. A lot of law enforcement access to communications has historically run through carriers. Lawful intercept, subpoenas for text records. If the content is end-to-end encrypted, the carrier can hand over metadata, who you texted, when, but the words are gone.
That's not a new conversation. It's the same one that happens every time encryption gets stronger, but this time it happened at the infrastructure level, not the app level. And most people didn't see it coming because the update just installed overnight.
The default is a different kind of power than the feature.
And most people will never know their phone changed.
Not every story about what your phone knows has a clean ending.
A 19-year-old in Colorado died last year after asking ChatGPT how to combine recreational drugs. And ChatGPT told him specific dosages, which substances to mix. At one point, it apparently suggested a playlist to, quote, fine-tune his trip for maximum out-of-body dissociation.
There's a before and after in this story. Before a software update in 2024, ChatGPT was refusing these conversations. After the update, it started helping. The same question got a different answer depending on which version of the software was running that day.
His parents are now suing OpenAI, and the lawsuit is going to force a question that nobody has had to answer cleanly yet. When an AI system positions itself as a trusted advisor and gives someone catastrophically wrong guidance, who owns that?
The framing matters here. A search engine gives you 10 links and makes you choose. ChatGPT speaks in first person, hands you a single answer in the same tone a doctor uses. You don't weigh sources, you receive a verdict. That's a fundamentally different relationship, and legally it might mean something.
There's a concept in medicine called the learned intermediary. The idea that a drug company's legal duty to warn patients is considered fulfilled, passed off, through the doctor who prescribed the drug. The doctor is the expert in the loop, so the company isn't talking directly to the patient. The question now is whether AI can occupy that role legally, and whether OpenAI is the company, the doctor, or something that doesn't fit either category.
What's strange is that the system apparently knew to refuse once. Something in the original design drew a line. Then the line moved, and a 19-year-old was on the other side of it when it did.
The lawsuit probably won't resolve the liability question. These cases almost never do on the first try. but it's going to force a judge to say whether an AI that speaks like a doctor should be held like one. There is a pipe in Douglasville, Georgia that the local water utility didn't know existed, feeding a data center, pulling water out of the system while the county was in drought and residents were watching their pressure drop.
30 million gallons. And the utility found out the way you'd find out a stranger had been using your garden hose, after the fact, by accident.
Data centers need enormous amounts of water to cool their servers. The machines run hot, you run cold water through the facility, the water evaporates or drains. It's not exotic, it's basically industrial air conditioning at a massive scale, but the volumes are staggering.
And this one had a second connection, a pipe that wasn't registered, wasn't accounted for, wasn't on anyone's map at the water authority.
Meanwhile, residents in the same county were being told to cut back, lawn restrictions, usage limits, the usual drought response, and they noticed something was off because their taps felt weaker.
They weren't imagining it.
The county did an investigation, found the unauthorized connection, found the usage, found that their largest customer had been pulling water through infrastructure nobody officially knew about.
And charged 0 penalties. The utility eventually collected payment for the water itself, about $150,000, but nothing for exceeding the limits. The water director explained it pretty directly. They're our largest customer.
Which is honest, at least, and probably the most important sentence in this whole story because it describes the actual power dynamic. A data center moves into a county, becomes the dominant economic presence, and then the regulatory relationship gets complicated in a very specific direction.
There are dozens of these facilities being built right now, most of them in places that aren't Atlanta, smaller counties, tighter water budgets, the same economic pressure to keep the customer happy.
And most of them are thirstier than the one in Georgia.
A guy in 2010 spent $20,000 trying to build an online education app, ran out of money before it launched, watched something almost identical, Udemy, go on to be worth $4 billion.
He had the idea, just not the runway.
Now he's back. He and his brother built a meditation app in weeks using AI. The same thing would have taken a professional dev team 18 months.
The wall between having an idea and actually shipping something is basically gone.
Which means the bottleneck has moved. It's not who can build anymore.
It's who can get anyone to notice they built it.
There are probably 1,000 Udemys being finished right now by people who couldn't have touched this 5 years ago.
SpaceX just pumped over 11 million pounds of propellant into Starship V3 for the first time.
That's the dress rehearsal before the first actual test flight. Could be as soon as next week.
The rocket is 408 feet tall, tallest rocket ever built.
And NASA has bet the moon program on it. This is the vehicle that's supposed to land astronauts on the lunar surface.
Eventually Mars, too, if you believe the roadmap.
The fueling test is the part where you find out if something you've never fully loaded is actually what you thought it was.
11 million pounds of propellant, sitting in a vehicle that has never held 11 million pounds of propellant.
And next week, they light it. A vulnerability is a hole in software code that an attacker can use to break in. Most software has them, and the race is always between who finds the hole first.
OpenAI just launched a tool that finds them autonomously, scans your code, maps out how an attacker would get in, then proposes the fix.
Before anyone malicious gets there.
Every major AI lab is building something like this right now, the same capabilities that could be used offensively handed to defenders first.
Which is either a genuine shift or a very optimistic way to frame an arms race.
If this becomes standard in software development, the whole logic of who finds bugs first starts to look different.
The question is whether the defenders and the attackers are running the same model.
Tomorrow is already stacking up.
A few things we've been watching are starting to move.
We'll see if they go where we think they're going.
They usually don't.
We'll be back tomorrow. Singularity Pulse is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is financial, legal, or professional advice. Views expressed are our own.
I'm Knox. Every Saturday on Pulse Deep Dive, one story told in acts. This season, how AI happened, who really invented the internet, and going back to the moon 53 years later. New chapter every Saturday. Find it wherever you listen.
Origins is a different kind of show. Every Sunday, we investigate the forces that shape the modern world, the geography, the science, the commerce, the decisions made centuries ago that are still playing out today. Find it wherever you listen to this podcast.